Oh, hi. Welcome to Aquatic Zoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about strategic planning. Woo! I'm talking in the zoo and aquarium aspect here because that's what we like to talk about, all the things in relation to zoos and aquariums. So, strategic planning. It's one of those meetings that's really fun. Where you have a lot of people who have a lot of different viewpoints trying to come together to conjure up a plan for the future that encompasses all of the parts and pieces of the things that they do into a shared vision of what your institution is going to be. These can be very challenging meetings. You've got people from all over the facility who do all sorts of different jobs who are trying to come together, agree and disagree respectfully, and make sure that their vision is also a piece of the institution's vision, right? We're all trying to work towards this goal, kind of centered under whatever our mission is as an organization, to create a plan for what we're going to do and how we're going to get there. So it starts with the mission, right? You know what your organization's mission is. If you don't, you should probably look it up. But for zoos and aquariums, it tends to be something that has to deal with the natural world, education, conservation, sustainability, that kind of thing, like something along those lines, right? And so when we are coming up with a strategic plan for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, we're trying to incorporate that plan using the mission as the framework for our decision making. So as we're kind of discussing what we're going to do and what the possibilities are, it's all made with that mission in mind, right? That's part of, it's a big part of how we decide what goes, what stays, what fits into the strategic mission or the strategic plan, what seems like it's, kind of off the beaten path and seems kind of strange and not like it doesn't belong, right, with all the rest of the stuff. And it's the mission that helps us make those decisions. So in the strategic planning meeting, it's good to know what the institution's strengths are. Some institutions are really good at outreach and education and really driving home the messages of the institution, right? They have a really good reach. They have really good connections with the community, maybe. There are institutions that are very good at conservation. They have lots of conservation opportunities and they execute it well. They save animals all over the place, whether it's locally or regionally or around the world. Like, they're really good at that, right? There are other institutions that are really cutting edge with their animal care. So they become the institution that everybody contacts with questions or goes for workshops at the institution to try and learn more techniques, right? And so that's a possibility too. You could have a community of really philanthropically excited individuals that happen to be in your area and they have a lot of funds to give to your work, right? And so that could be your strength too. You could have a really strong membership base that loves everything that you're doing, that supports the institution no matter what, all of these things, right? There's lots of different aspects that an institution can say, these are what we do best, right? So understand what those are. Also, understand where the weaknesses are. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not good at what you do. It just means that maybe you have the chance to discuss whether you want to shore up those perceived weaknesses, or if you just want to focus on your strengths, you can do that. So that's where kind of these discussions are going when you're beginning what you're going to do with your strategic plan. As a group, you're going to want to tackle some questions about what the future looks like, right? And one of those might be, what challenges are you going to be facing? Like, you're kind of guessing at this point, depending on how long you're making your strategic plan for. It does include some master planning, so infrastructure and things like that. But you're looking at the future of your organization. So not just the buildings, not just the setup of how things run. It's the people, it's the processes, it's the brand, all of these things are wrapped up in your strategic plan. So you're wanting to look ahead and prepare for things that are coming. So if there's changes in law, if there's changes in your local area, climate change has really affected a lot of industries and facilities, right? So it's possible that you might have some changes involved with climate change. You could be interested in making your whole operation greener. So, wanting to incorporate more sustainable practices if you can, and reduce your kind of carbon footprint as an organization, right? So there's that. You could be looking at changing demographics in your area. So you could be seeing a big influx of families, into your region for whatever reason. It's, jobs are being created in your area. It's bringing in people from out of town, like that kind of stuff. You have to just kind of be aware of what changes are happening around you and kind of plan ahead, I guess. That's the whole point. We're trying to plan ahead so that when the next 5 years rolls around, the next 10 years rolls around, you're not already behind because you didn't foresee any of this happening. And therefore, you've got to make some serious changes that you have not kind of gradually put in place over time as part of your strategic plan. Honestly, you can kind of simplify some of this stuff, right? I like to use the stoplight analysis, right? So that's, green light. What do we want to keep doing? What do we do right now that we want to continue doing into the future? The yellow light would be, what are the things that we're doing right now that we may want to edit some, that we may want to change for the future? And then the red is, what do we want to stop doing now because it's not going to benefit us in the future, right? So you just kind of go through all of the stuff that you do, your programs, your staffing, not saying fire people right now, but I don't know, maybe that's part of your strategic plan. I would hope not, but maybe changing job titles and job responsibilities. That could definitely be part of a strategic plan. So what are we doing right now that we want to continue doing and improve upon? Your green light, your green stuff. What do we want to edit some? We're going to continue doing something in this vein, but we're going to do it a little bit differently so that it's better for the future. And then what do we need to stop right now because it's not going to benefit us? It's going to use resources and time and money that we don't want to put towards that thing, right? That's the kind of stuff that you want to eliminate from your strategic plan. And that helps you kind of focus a little bit better. If you take out those red light things and you're just left with the yellow and the green, you're in much better position. You don't have to spread your thought process out so widely. So I find that helpful. As I said, your master plan is involved with this as well. Typically, a master plan is something that specifically involves infrastructure and the changes that you're going to make to the organization and physically to your building, maybe to your grounds, to better shape it for what's happening in your strategic plan. A lot of this is blue sky, beautiful, we're going to build this entire new wing. We're going to create this entirely different feeling, this immersive set of exhibits. We're going to, provide a public space for people, whether they're coming to our aquarium or zoo to visit or they just want to hang out somewhere. We have this nice public space that we're going to build, walkways over roads and all this kinds of stuff, places to park. All of that is part of the master plan that usually gets you towards meeting your goals in a more physical sense for that strategic plan to be successful. More than likely, you've already got an idea of what kind of things you're going to need infrastructure-wise to kind of progress and grow. A lot of the time, it tends to be a parking deck. Or we need a walkway over here. Or, things that organically, as you're running your organization, that things could be better, right? You need wider paths for people or maybe more shade. That kind of stuff. that's where you're putting that kind of thing into your master plan, which is the physical kind of infrastructure type things, and pairing that with your strategic plan, because that's the people, the goals, the organization, the programming, all of that goes into the strategic plan so that you continue them together to meet what is the vision of the organization in the future. The kinds of programs you're going to have, where you're going to have them, the areas where you're going to concentrate, your conservation efforts, where are they going to happen? Oh, they're going to be in this big, beautiful green LEED certified building. Right? So like all of this kind of stuff, like the master plan and the strategic plan move together. In most cases, and there may be different labels for some of these things depending on your organization. Not everybody uses the term strategic plan or master plan, but as I have used them in the past, one is the physical stuff, the infrastructure changes and shifts that need to happen. And, that makes things that are going to be better for climate change, that are going to keep the building in good repair. So like they could be like replacing a whole bunch of heating and AC for the building because, they're 15 years old. By the time we actually are ready to change them, they're going to be 20 years old. Then we have a whole new units and they're going to be so, energy efficient and da-da-da-da-da. Like the strategic plan is how we're going to do that as far as what the people are going to do. And the master plan tends to be more what physically are we going to be changing so that we can meet our goals with the strategic plan. Like how's the site physically going to change? Some institutions decide at this point whether they're going to have like off-site buildings. Are they going to house their office staff in another area? When we have these organizations and they grow and they grow and they grow, it's wonderful. But sometimes we don't have the space to do all the things we want to do right here where we started, right? And so there might be as part of the plan some land buying. There might be building construction. And just trying to figure out where we're going to put these people and where we're going to conduct these programs that we want to do that are going to help us further our goals for the institution and how they come together to create the organization of tomorrow that we're aiming for. Some organizations take this opportunity to change the way that they deliver their programming and changing their message that they're trying to send to visitors, right? And so a lot of us have done this where when we started with climate change and the human impact on the natural world and, the animals and their environment and how a lot of animals suffer from habitat destruction because people are around. Anyway, that kind of messaging is really doom and gloom. It's a little sad and it makes people not feel super great when they hear a lot of that. And so a lot of our institutions have kind of changed the way our messaging works so that, yes, this animal is challenged because it faces loss of habitat due to human people, like just building stuff in forests, whatever. Like because of people, these animals are losing some of their habitat, right? And so therefore their numbers are reduced. But here are what changes we can make to provide these places for these animals. Like, if you're talking about, say, bats, like they have a place in an ecosystem, they're very important, and they're losing their homes to the encroachment of people, right? Well, what you could do, depending on the type of bat, of course, is like put up a bat house where some bats can live and come in and out as they please, but you have built your house there, but also you've provided a space for the bats to be and to live and thrive because you've made that for them specifically. It doesn't really work for birds. It's just for bats, right? So like that kind of messaging is totally different, right? Like, yeah, we don't expect you to give up your house so that these deer can live, right? It's just, we're going to make better choices about what we're doing. And just, as you're moving about your life, dear guest, please think about the animals that you're impacting. It's not so doom and gloom, right? And so that's all part of strategic planning. Like you can change your messaging and how you deliver the messages that you're trying to give to people. Like, you want people to walk away having learned something new, but you don't necessarily always want that to be kind of doom and gloom and people are terrible and there's no hope for the world, right? We want it to be a hopeful, happy, educational thing, something that they remember fondly rather than remembering sadly. But as part of strategic planning, you can figure out how you want to deliver that messaging, how your programs are going to fit together into kind of a larger message, and what your goals are for your programming and the messages that you're trying to send. Is your brand going to change? Is your logo going to change? All of that kind of stuff happens. Like, I've seen zoos that, operate a similar way for a long, long time, and then they decide we're going to break out into an aquarium as well. And so then they change their brand and they change their logo to include fish to make it clearer to the people that are there, to the people who have been in their area for 50 years but had never seen an aquarium. And suddenly now the zoo has an aquarium, so they want to communicate that quickly. And therefore they change the logo and change the branding so that it incorporates that change, a big change for the facility, so that guests know what they're getting into well before they even step foot on your property. When an institution makes a big change like that, that is in the discussion in the strategic plan many, many years prior to any changes being made. So, an institution could decide, yes, we're going to open up an aquarium, and they start that process well ahead of time. So before there's ever an actual aquarium with water in it on the premises, that's been in plans for probably 5 to 10 years ahead of time so that things move smoother. You've got a plan to follow. You've got your milestones that you're trying to meet. This needs to happen before we do that. Like, you want your brand to change technically before you open your aquarium so that everybody understands this is now a zoo and aquarium, not just the zoo like it always has been, right? So those changes are part of the strategic plan that happened a long time ago. Do we need to change our marketing? A lot of social media changes on the daily. But you can have an idea of what outlets you'd like to use and how you want to appeal to the demographics that you're aiming for, right? So if you're aiming for young families, for instance, you're probably going to want to use some social media that reflects that. If you're wanting to bring in older folks that we love, you might want to use a particular type of social media that appeals to them. There's always some way to manipulate social media to reach the audience you're trying to aim for, right? And it does change quickly. Do you want to incorporate videos? Do you want to do interviews with your staff? Do you want to just put out really cool animal facts? Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can run marketing and run social media so that it meets the goals that you're trying to achieve. And you need to have coherent messaging about that, and so that everything kind of flows together. It's all from your institution. It's all branded a certain way, and this is where you come to get more information, that kind of thing. Is your leadership going to change? That's always something to incorporate into a strategic plan. Like, if you've had the same director for decades, then it's going to be an abrupt change when that person decides that they want to move on to other things. It's abrupt for the institution, but, if you plan ahead for that kind of thing, you can kind of lessen the load or lessen the impact of that vacancy, right? So the director could be kind of training with deputy directors so that those people are ready to go and take their place when the time is right. Or you reshuffle kind of how the jobs work so that the director is doing a little bit less and a little bit less over time, because then you'll have a ready staff to step up and fill that void, because it wasn't that big of a void to fill because you planned for that. Right? That's all kind of incorporated into this big planning event. And it's often multiple meetings over a very long time. And you hash out things that people don't agree with. You hash out things that make people uncomfortable. But you're always trying to keep the mission front and center. And you're trying to kind of guess at what the future holds. Now, I'll tell you, with strategic planning, there are times when your strategic plan goes straight out the window. Or you've got to revisit it, basically. And COVID was one of those. That affected everything. And so a lot of our institutions had these lovely strategic plans with these master plans to go along with them. And then all of a sudden their master plans falling behind because they couldn't get the construction things done on time, because deadlines were falling behind, those milestones were not being met. And it's just a time where you have to plan again, right? You put all this work into your strategic plan and you realize that, yes, we tried to predict what was going to happen and we failed on this point. Everyone failed on that point. And so you've got to revisit it quick to try and make your deadlines, your milestones, your expectations a little bit more understandable and a little bit more relevant and a little bit more fitting for what has occurred. And a lot of our institutions revisited in that, how are we going to make up the revenue that we've lost? How are we going to respond if this sort of thing happens again? You know, what are we going to do for our staff? What are we going to do for our animals? Like, how are we going to respond to this sort of thing in the future? It also inspired a lot of us to put a little bit more wiggle room in our milestones because things happen. We all realize that life is not as predictable as we thought it would be, and that we need a little bit more of a contingency plan when things aren't going quite the way we thought that they would. I gotta say that making these strategic plans takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of talking, discussion, disagreement, frustration. But in the end, our institutions are able to come up with this big, beautiful kind of roadmap of how we envision our future as an organization to be, and how we're going to get there. Like, it's not just by this year we want to be in this position. It's actually the plan for how we intend to accomplish it. Yes, there might be some weird things that happen, like COVID, that might happen along the way and may throw us off a little bit. But in the end, here's where we're trying to go, right? And we may be able to get there. We may not. We may have to do some adjustment. And this is a type of thing that you revisit on a regular basis just to see if things need to be changed, if we need to refine the plan or be a little bit more specific or adjust our timelines for things. So it's not always the most pleasant experience, but it is rewarding, I guess. If you've been through it before, it's satisfying to see the final product, but a lot of us kind of look at it and think of all of the crazy discussions that we had while trying to get there, the things we had hoped would be in there that are not in there, the things that we think are not going to be that impactful that are in there, but it's kind of a big group effort, so you've got some concessions to make so you can get your way too. Sometimes there's a lot of collaboration involved. There's give and take. Not everybody's going to get everything they wanted. Even the director who is running the whole show, they don't always get what they want either. You know, they might have a slightly different version of what the goal is in their head. They're not the end all be all decision maker when it comes to strategic planning, right? So it's a group effort that all of these people who are looking at this organization from many different viewpoints have to come together and discuss and argue a little bit respectfully and figure out, where are we going? What is the mission? How do we plan to meet our goals with the mission in mind? And then what are the steps to get there? This is a roadmap of how we do it. So it's a little bit more literal for the master plan portion, with the physical changes to the institution and the grounds and the buildings that will make it easier to reach those strategic plan goals. But in the end, it is a gradual shift from where we are now to where we intend to be. Those steps end up being part of kind of a gap assessment, right? Here's where we are at this point. where we want to be is way over there, and all the stuff in between here where we are now and there where we want to be is the roadmap, right? Those are the steps that we take to get to the end goal. So you're kind of doing a very, very large gap assessment. If we are over here and we want to be over there eventually, what needs to be true for us to say that we've made it, right? So you've got to make some changes, some shifts, some adjustments so that you will end up where you want to be, where you envision yourself to be down the road someday in some period of time. And not every institution does it the same way. It might be just a strategic plan for a year. It might be 5 years, might be 10 years, on and on and on. I assume that it's going to be more than a year because short-term goals are helpful, but it does not help you envision where you're trying to get to when you're just making these little short plans. So it seems a little disjointed and you can get off track really easily, I would say, because you're making steps, but you might not be going quite the right direction to reach an end goal of any sort, right? So that's why I definitely think you should be making your strategic plans for a little bit longer time frame, just so you have that goal set out there so that you can try and figure out where you are right now and if you're making steps in the right direction. The last part of it is really presenting it to everyone. So it could be your board, it could be your staff, or it could be your community that you're just now you've come together, you've come up with this plan and you want to share what it is. You want everyone to see where you're headed, where you're planning to be, how you're intending to get there. Your staff's going to help you get there, obviously. Your community may also help you get there. And so it's good to have a clear message about what you intend for the future to look like. And so being able to share that with a fancy, pamphlet or booklet to show here's what we've been able to do. And now here's where we're planning to go next. Like, we've accomplished all these goals from the past, and that's why it's good to have your past strategic plans as well. But now here's where we're headed. Come with us on this journey. And so that's also part of it. Now, also keep in mind, watch that reaction. If you present your strategic plan and you get a whole bunch of blank stares, that might be a reason to revisit or discuss it at the very least. I was at a facility where the strategic plan seemed really strange. And so I really didn't know what to think of it when it came out. And not to say that the people didn't put effort and time and energy into it. And there were parts of it that were resonating well, but I'm not sure that they used the mission for that strategic planning, or they were just off in a weird direction that didn't seem to fit what the other people who are not leadership had in mind for the end goals of the strategic plan. And so it was a very awkward rollout, but that happens too. That is not the end of the world. This is kind of a living document. Yes, you're referring to it a lot as you plan and as you goal set and all that other kind of stuff, but that doesn't mean it's like set in stone. Stuff changes. You got to revise it. So revisit it often, discuss it often, but understand that it is just kind of an idea of where you're headed, not necessarily the set in stone steps that you're going to take to get there. Things may influence it from outside. Things may influence it from inside. You may lose a pivotal staff member who has a particular expertise and knowledge and experience, and you didn't see that coming, but you've got to soldier on, right? We're still trying to make it to these goals. We just need to adjust maybe how we're going to get there and the time frame, right? So revisit it, be proud of it. It's a lot of work, and understanding how it comes to be is really helpful. Okay, if you have any questions about that or any other zoo and aquarium type stuff or leadership and management things, let me know. You can send it to me in an email at aquatazoo@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you do, don't forget you can follow or subscribe on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. And if you're looking to take a vacation and you don't know where to start because it can be kind of intimidating on occasion, let me know. I happen to be a personal vacation advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you out. It does not cost you anything extra. The links are in the show notes. Okay, thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.